Pat, I want to thank you again for hosting ISPCS yet again. I know it's a labor of love, and you've given it all your love for a long time, so thank you. My name is Jim Vanderploeg. I'll be moderating the panel today. I serve as the Chief Medical Officer for Virgin Galactic and have enjoyed a 40-year career in aerospace medicine, most of that on the space medicine side. We have a distinguished group of speakers today, as you see here on the panel. In the interest of preserving time for you to hear them speak and not me talk up here, I will refer you to the bios in the back of the program for each of the speakers. I'll briefly introduce them in the order of their presentations, and then we'll go directly into a discussion format. So the first half or so of the hour allotted to this panel will be brief presentations by each of the panel members. We'll follow that then with some discussion on questions and topics that we've previously looked at, and finish up with questions from you all. So please send your questions through, and eventually they'll show up on my iPad up here, I think, and we can finish up with addressing some of those. So use that website, ispcs.socialqa.com, I believe. So I will introduce all of the panel members and then ask them to make their presentations. You can choose to come up to the podium is fine, or if you prefer just to do it from your seats, that's fine too. Beth Moses, you've heard about already. Beth is the Chief Astronaut Trainer for Virgin Galactic, and the only person on this panel who's actually been to space when she was the mission specialist on Virgin Galactic's second space flight in February of this year. John Mulholland, next to her, is well known to this audience. He is Vice President and Program Manager of the Commercial Crew Program in Space Exploration within the Boeing Company. Tarah Castleberry is a physician and flight surgeon for Virgin Galactic. Next to her is Smith Johnston, who is a NASA flight doc and currently is moving into the role of Chief Medical Officer and lead flight surgeon for Axiom Space. And finally, Benji Reed, who's Director of Commercial Crew Mission Management for SpaceX. So I'm sure you would agree with me, we have quite a distinguished panel. And Beth, I'll turn to you first for your prepared remarks.
Okay, I'll stand briefly to say hello to everyone and let you know that we all just had a silent consensus. We're all going to sit for our talks. So I'll sit back down so that the rest of my panelists can do the same thing. I just have a sort of a short opener, and then I'll hand it off to John. I think actually Wayne and Jim have already cut to the chase, so you already sort of know a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. Let me just walk you very briefly through some an overview of Virgin Galactic and some recent highlights. Where do I point it? We're going to start with the video.
Yeah, and you can see it down front too.
Okay, got it. Thank you. This is our most recent test flight at Virgin Galactic.
Release. Fire. Hey, welcome to Space Scotland. Congrats, Steve.
Welcome to the club, astronaut.
Thanks, Space. I like this club.
So thank you, General Monteith. You just saw commercial astronauts 5, 6, and 7 when we skipped off the ship from the most recent test flight of Virgin Galactic. I should not be special. I've been called out twice so far this morning. The idea here is to open space to everyone. You should all be able to go to space on multiple different vehicles, the vehicle of your choosing. But I will talk just a little bit about the one that we've just fielded at Virgin Galactic. I'll go through that last video sort of very briefly, step by step, and break it down for you so you know what you saw. And then I have a couple of closing comments, and then I'll pass it off to John. It should take maybe 3 more minutes. So far, 575 different humans have been to space, 65 female. And obviously, this entire industry is here to greatly expand that. Virgin Galactic has over 600 customers signed up. You can see in this shot our spacecraft, which is hanging from our catamaran-style carrier aircraft, and a good portion of our 600 customers that are eager to fly. When you all come fly with us, you'll spend a good bit of time with Tarah and myself and Jim and the staff of Virgin Galactic. This is obviously Spaceport America, just down the road. We're now here permanently. Tarah and I have our desks here. We just bought a house nearby. So thank you, New Mexico, for welcoming us so wonderfully. The right side of the shot are the large hangar doors. It's sized for 2 carrier aircraft and 5 spacecraft. The left side, the glass side, is a friends and family area on the first floor, mission control, and Tara's and mine desk on the second floor, operations desk on the second floor, and then training space for customer training on the third floor. And you'd come train for 3 days, and then on day 4, I'd strap you in, and SpaceShipTwo will take off. The carrier aircraft will climb to 45,000 feet, and then release SpaceShipTwo. Let's see if I can see my own charts without having to turn around. There we go. I'm sorry, I am going to stand up because my charts are down there. Sorry. You don't have to, though. And then at 45,000 feet, SpaceShipTwo releases. You can see that here. There's 3 seconds of free fall, and then the rocket motor lights. The rocket motor is very smooth. When it lights, you accelerate forward. You go 0 to 60 in less than a second, and supersonic in about 8 seconds. And it's not a sudden lurch. It just feels like a super fun forward acceleration. And then the pilots turn the ship towards space. As you turn upward, which you can see in here in the back of this photo, as the spaceship turns upwards, you compress down in your seat at about 3.5 G until you're going purely vertical. And then you're just compressed back in your seat again at about 3.5 G. This was great fun. 60 seconds under a rocket motor, Mach 3. You keep hearing your pilots, Dave and Suj, counting up the Mach numbers, and you're getting there, getting there, getting there. It's a great ride. And then the rocket motor cuts off. And when the rocket motor cuts off, you're weightless, and you can unstrap. On my flight, we had a call and response. First, the pilots cleared me to unstrap, and then I confirmed that the cabin was safe for my test. I cleared myself to unstrap and did so. And then, of course, you can see Earth for the first time, which is quite something. The picture probably speaks for itself, but what most people don't notice in this photo is I'm actually weightless and unstrapped out of my seat. That gray seatbelt hanging off the right is my shoulder strap, and that gray curve hanging off the right is the top of the seat. I'm slightly elevated, and it's just an amazing view. At this point, you can translate about the cabin. I had a very scripted and triple, quadruple checked timeline to go about the cabin and to certain work sites and evaluate certain interfaces that we're designing for our customers. But our customers are going to be able to just enjoy without a script. I did head up to the cockpit, visit our pilots. That's Dave McKay on the right and Such on the left, Mike Masucci. And then toward Apogee, I took a look out the top windows. We have 17 windows. I'll spend just a moment talking about apogee of a suborbital flight because Tarah's nodding because unfortunately she sits with people that have waxed poetic about this way too many times in the office. But the entire vehicle is coasting essentially to a stop and then coasting back down to Earth. And folks in the cabin, like myself in this last flight, we're weightless and floating about the cabin. And you have this God's eye view of Earth, and you all come to a stop briefly as you coast up and then coast back down. And it just brings a hush over everyone. The view is magnificent. It is blacker than black, super high def bright Earth. The day we flew, there was snow on the mountains, and I thought Earth was wearing her diamonds for us. They were so glistening. And it's just sort of an eternal, weightless space moment that none of us will ever forget, and we all speak about it a little differently. We need to fly poets and artists, not just pilots and astronauts, because people need to be able to experience that and articulate it in a much better way than a timeline engineer can articulate it. But this little bit is pretty magic. And then the pilots let you know to get back in your seat. You strap back in. The ship feathers. The booms fold up to give a stable entry through the atmosphere. It's another 3.5 G briefly on entry for about 2 breaths. And then we glide to a runway landing like any aircraft for a giant party at Spaceport America. Thank you, Spaceport America. I think Dan Hicks is here. And it's a wonderful thing, but we all think it means a lot in sort of a broader sense. Everyone here knows what this photo is. Blue marble, Apollo 17, taken by the human hand. This is the most downloaded image on Earth. And we have found in talking with our customers that in very many ways, we are reuniting them with their childhood selves, and we're tapping into something that is innately human and looking at home. And we think that is important, meaningful, and transformative in just the way that the commercial space industry will be transformative. And I can't wait to train everyone to do this and see a piece of this. Thank you. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Beth. You also saw in the video an alternative use of New Mexico champagne at the end of the flight. John, take it away.
All right. Hey, thank you very much. Hey, first, Pat, thank you once again for an outstanding conference, and what a fun panel. Thanks to all the panel members. It was really interesting. A couple things before I start. First is Pat said that we each have 5 minutes, so I will go at pace. And then the second thing is it was interesting. Pat called me a few weeks ago and wanted to make sure that one of the things that we talked about in this panel was going forward, how we collaborate with each other as we advance in what I consider 2 market adjacencies. You know, if you look at suborbital and then Benji and I with orbital. It was great timing. It was great that we were able to yesterday or the day before announce not only an investment, but an ongoing collaboration with Virgin Galactic. So it's going to be a lot of fun to continue to develop our 2 companies, but also this market segment. All right, moving in. So Captain Obvious, right? Space is huge. And as I look at it, there's really 3 market segments. So there's very little competition if you look at suborbital and orbital, right? 2 totally different places. The price point's different. The experience is different. The barriers to entry are different. All hard, but a lot of room for us to continue to work together. Moving on, right? One of the things that we've been fortunate as a company is to be in human spaceflight in low Earth orbit since the beginning. So we've had International Space Station on orbit, complete man-tended for well over 20 years, for over 20 years. And so the next big thing is going to be with Benji and I moving forward and servicing the space station. As you heard earlier from Pat, the commercialization of the ISS, and more importantly for a lot of us is sponsoring and developing collaborating with other destinations in low Earth orbit. That's really going to allow, in the decades to come, the expansion of commercialization of low Earth orbit. But there's also room for a lot of us as we look forward to NASA's primary focus right now, which is exploration beyond LEO, going back to the moon and then onto Mars, which will be partnered with and serviced with commercial activity also. So it's a huge place, 3 different and distinct market segments, and right now, really all at the cusp of entering and moving past development and into service, right? As you heard from Virgin, right on the doorsteps. I always told Mike Moses that I would know he was serious when he moved to New Mexico, and they're here. So they're obviously ready. And Benji, obviously, he's taken a big step earlier this year, working towards the next step. And then Boeing, we are right on the verge also of taking that next step. So it's just a really fun and exciting time as we look to, as I said, move past development and into operation. Let's see. So we're extremely fortunate, or I'm extremely fortunate to work for a company that's probably got the broadest and most exciting space portfolio of any company in the world. Not only the current portfolio, but if you look past or look to the past, we've been a partner with NASA in every human spaceflight program that this country has domestically fielded. And not only the human spaceflight side, but also the unmanned satellite side. One interesting point, and I didn't know it until recently, but the SYNCOM satellite that got launched in 1963, it was the first geosynchronous satellite, and in 1964, it was able to broadcast live for the first time from a satellite the opening ceremonies of the Tokyo Olympics. So it's kind of neat that next year we'll be going back to Tokyo, and you can see the advancement of the industry because every second of the Olympics or anything around the world is televised. So really important that we move forward in this industry. But one of the reasons why we've had that sustained presence in this industry is a continual focus by the entire team on safety and mission assurance. And I'll kind of lead into a video on that.
If I'm not 100% involved every single day, we are putting, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional a little bit.
Some of us, if something's not right, then, we're not going to sleep tonight. You know what I mean? If something's not right, I'm not going to sleep. So we're going to get it straightened out.
You're not just carrying the dreams of a particular company and agency, but of the entire world.
Both Boeing and NASA are doing something right now, not just for the benefit of a private company like Boeing, not just for an agency like NASA. They're doing this on behalf of the nation for the benefit of mankind.
This is human spaceflight. We've got people, we've got teammates and colleagues that are going to fly in this vehicle. We need to make sure that we get them there safely and we get them back safely. I'd fly it every time if I could.
There's no point to any of this, to commercial human spaceflight, if we don't make sure our crew is safe.
Nobody understands this. I don't think anybody really outside of this business understands what we're doing.
These spacecraft are hand-built from the ground up. I mean, we don't even use power tools on them.
Any little piece means something important. You don't know what you don't know. And it's just a lessons learned and keeping your eyes and ears open.
Everybody watches everybody else. You have to. You can't make mistakes. There is no room for error.
I've heard people say, would you make that decision with Chris's wife in the room? And the answer is always yes.
You got to put in 110% every day, and take time from our families to make sure that he can come home to his.
Our grass is tall at home, and our kids are looking for us, but I'm building a spaceship to get back to a spaceship that I made already.
You can't tweak something when you're up there. You can only do it one time. I know what I've done is a pretty good job.
I might not be riding on it, but I'm right there with him.
Launch is going to be a great day, but that's just the start for us. When we see it land and everybody's safe, that's going to be really when we do the high five.
It's really important. I mean, I think success in this industry in the past and especially going forward is going to be based on all of these companies, and everyone here knows it, top to bottom. Everyone on the team, everyone touching the engineering, everyone touching the spacecraft, and everyone touching the training has got to be focused on one thing, and that's safety and mission assurance. And it's important to make sure that culture is instilled down and in with every member of the team. So looking forward, we're really excited. So kind of where we are from a program standpoint, our next and last major integrated test is going to be the validation of pad abort. And so we're excited that that spacecraft is built, the propellant is half loaded, and we'll be conducting that test out at the missile range here right outside of Las Cruces in early November. And then moving on to the uncrewed flight test. So the spacecraft will complete build this month. So we're just really excited about that. There's only a couple of pieces that have to go on before we mate and load, and we look forward to a December 17th uncrewed flight test. So we're really excited, and this team is ready. They've done the testing that we need to go do as soon as we finish that pad abort test. And we'll field very shortly the only domestic spacecraft that's ever landed on land. And I'm really excited about the December flight because I already looked at the trajectories, and primary landing site's going to be at White Sands. So that's even more exciting. And so I appreciate it. This team is ready, and we're excited to be at the cusp of, as with everyone else, the cusp of doing something that's just really going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you, John. Exciting times here and to come. Next up is Dr. Tarah Castleberry, and I'm seeing your questions come in, so keep them coming. Tarah.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you all for having us. We're delighted to be here. I just want to give you a quick overview of the medical screening process and the preparations that we're making so that we can make this dream come true for more. You know, what happened with Beth and the flight that she was able to experience, how do we make that happen for the general population? And just as a backdrop and giving a little bit of history, just reminding us that we've come a long way. I had a couple of years ago, I was doing some research and had the 1926 edition, the original edition of aviation medicine textbook, where one of the criteria for becoming a pilot was to be of the male gender. And that was one of the top criteria. And for good reason is that mainly there were a lot of unknowns. You know, at the beginning and where we started, where we've come from, there have been a lot of unknowns. And so we've come a long way through another era of the beginning of commercial airline travel. And with that start of commercial airline travel, I didn't realize, but learned recently that the original flight attendants were all required to be nurses so that they could respond to unknown responses from those general population that were flying in commercial airline travel. And so we've come through that era, and we've learned a lot over time about responses to aviation and then responses to space and leading into NASA. So similarly, the standards for professional astronauts at NASA and other government space agencies started out as very strict and prohibited a lot of medical conditions, a lot of physical conditions, and a lot of folks. And over time, so we took astronauts who were selected, and then they were trained, and then they flew, and then time went by, and they aged, and with age comes medical conditions that can creep into our older age. And what we learned was, and the part of the space medicine practitioner or physician is to take that person and enable that asset, if you will, and enable them to fly for longer and to be able to give back and to fly for a longer period of time and more than after they've been diagnosed with certain medical conditions. And so with time we've learned that those original medical conditions that were originally thought disqualifying, people did just fine in orbital flight and long duration flights with those medical conditions. And the reason for those restrictions was good in that We didn't just want to survive orbital spaceflight or suborbital spaceflight. We needed astronauts to thrive and to perform at an extremely high level. And so until we had knowns about how they were going to respond, we had to have restrictions. And so we've moved a long way and come a long way. And part of that is as our Virgin Galactic medical team, under the direction of Chief Medical Officer Jim Vanderploeg, over the last 10 years with a group of physicians and scientists at the University of Texas in Galveston, we've done a series of centrifuge studies and putting approximately 300 lay persons from age 18 to 86 in the centrifuge and exposing them to the space flight profiles that would be consistent with either Virgin Galactic or a generic suborbital space flight. And among those 300 people that we've, it was screened and put into the centrifuge, up to 86 years of age, they've had medical problems that are conducive or consistent with that age group. So hypertension, heart disease, lung disease, neck and back problems, and diabetes. And what we found, and all of these studies are published, what we found is most people, lay persons who are untrained, do very well and not only tolerate the forces of suborbital spaceflight, but love it and enjoy the experience. So for us at Virgin Galactic, what are we doing? We have a screening process that's essentially a risk assessment model. Basically, we will be taking all of this information and the knowledge base that we've learned from the past, putting the spaceflight participants through a screening process, a screening questionnaire, then an exam. We review the medical history, and we put them into risk categorizations, risk categories, low, medium, and high risk. And those folks who are medium or higher risk, we might do further testing or further information gathering, possibly monitoring them in the centrifuge to see how they respond to those spaceflight accelerations, and then work with them and work with their physicians to once again make sure that they can not only tolerate but enjoy spaceflight. So that's part of what we do with our program. And just to mention that there is no list of disqualifying conditions, not from us, not from the FAA, no standards there. So each company is responsible for developing those. But however, with our extensive research experience, with the experience from NASA that we've seen over the years, and input from our medical advisory board, which includes experts from around the world, we are confident that Virgin Galactic has a product that will provide not only a tolerable experience, but an amazing, enjoyable, memorable, and life-changing experience for everyone who wants to go.
Thank you, Tarah. Next up is Smith Johnston, Axiom Space. Smith.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure being here, and thanks, Pat, for inviting me here to be part of this panel. And it's great networking by being on a panel with people you're going to be working with for hopefully a long, long time. I'm new to this conference, and so I'm not sure how much you know about space medicine, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about that and wear a couple hats here. First of all, it's medical care in a high-performance environment, and this is probably the most dangerous thing that we do up in space. It's a very unique environment. Every organ system of the body is affected. In fact, we've found new syndromes that we're working on because we've been flying 6 people now for over 12 years, and I'm happy to chat about that. I'm going to do my 5 minutes, though. And the International Space Station, that's been kind of my job since I arrived at the Space Center in 1991 with Wiley and then with NASA. And my first job was to go build the emergency medical system for the space station. So we did that. And this is as close as I've gotten to zero G and microgravity, but I hope to remedy that with these folks here in Virgin Galactic and others. And I did it on a KC-135, and that's where we found out that things aren't the same in microgravity. You know, you have to have air fluid separators, you have to package your medications uniquely, you have to train folks in 70 hours to be able to do advanced cardiac life support, and then you have to train them to do it in microgravity. You also have to do the research on the animal research to see, can you really do advanced cardiac life support? Can you do cricothyrotomies, waking everybody up with a little blood this morning? Can we do chest tube drainage? And can we do effective laparoscopic surgery? Mark Campbell and Richard Jennings will go down in history as the first people to do laparoscopic surgery in microgravity, and I will go down as the first person to do mouth-to-snout resuscitation on a 120-pound pig. And, you know, I really enjoy my work, you know. It's just good stuff.
For that, I will give you my wings.
Thank you. Fortunately, we did this about the same time of the Republican National Convention, so we had to do it in secrecy, and it was during, you know, Opie and Tom Hanks doing Apollo 13. So all those scenes, they did 5 weeks, and they were amazing. A couple of their cameramen got really sick, but that's okay. And then the beauty of that is this is our medical system up in orbit, and this is how if we had an electrocution or somebody went into AFib or we had a decompression sickness hit, that we'd be able to do effective CPR and do a quick little bump start to get them back in a normal rhythm. And so this has been kind of my life's work, and it's been amazing to work with a lot of people in the room here to see this happen. And of course, this is an amazing platform, but it is going to go away someday. So my next phase in life, I'm retiring here soon, is to work for this company called Axiom, which I'm very excited about. And they're trying to build a bigger, better, newer, faster, stronger, lighter, cheaper, I don't know. Yes, first commercial space station. And I'm really excited to work with the team that's doing that. Basically to try to make working in space and in low Earth orbit commonplace, and to host government astronauts, private companies, researchers, and individual explorers, and to have these wonderful guys ferry our folks back and forth from the United States up to the space station. Because we want as many people as we can get up in low Earth orbit so they can experience things, and we can also continue to do the research we need to do. We also want to manufacture stuff. And we want all ages to be going up in space. John Glenn was 77 when he went up. I've got 30 astronauts now in their 80s and 90s. So we're really, my first slide, space medicine, terrestrial applications for human performance, and it's also human health, performance, and longevity. And the longevity part, there's a lot we're learning from putting people in an accelerated state of aging and getting the data back to help us here on the ground. Well, this is the model, the CAD model right now. And this is the timeline, and we're about 2019, professional training begins, and we have our first Italian Air Force professional astronaut, who will be a long-duration astronaut and probably a short-duration astronaut, arriving at Johnston Space Center November 11th to begin training. We also have our participants who will also begin training in 2020. And then in 2024, we hope to start taking modules up to be on the space station. But one of the other, in 2021, we're actually going to fly a long-duration mission for research that will carry 300 mice. And so there are some great scientific opportunities to look at the medical problems that we have from the accelerated aging of 10 times the gravity, lack of gravity, 10 times the osteoporosis, 10 times the radiation, and 10 times the carbon dioxide environment that we've struggled to deal with. And additional opportunities to train with ISS partners and supplement ISS crew science missions to in other words, as we build this new space station, partner with the ISS, and then partner with NASA, and then partner with everybody in this room to evolve into a standalone station. And as far as what Tarah was talking about, as far as medical standards, until we get our own platform up in space, separate from the ISS, we have to use not only our present medical standards, but we have to go through our international partners' International Medical Board. Even for short-duration flyers, everybody that touches feet on the space station has to go through this International Medical Board. And the plan is that once we get a standalone station, it will be on Axiom, and also the folks that are taking the folks to the station will use our own set of medical standards, and so we're excited about that. And finally, this is what we hope to end up with, a standalone station after the decommissioning of the International Space Station in 2028 or later. And I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for having me here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Smith. And finally, with Benji from SpaceX, your introductory remarks and presentation.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm going to have to do the same thing Beth did because I can't quite see that screen. So I'm actually going to run up here to the podium. It might be easier to point at the slides at the same time. So apologies for the change, and that way I can see a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so first of all, huge thank you always to Pat and everybody. This conference is a long-term, early fan of space, of commercialized space and human spaceflight. Thank you to the panelists for letting me be here, and also they're going to indulge me a little bit because I was supposed to be on 2 other panels tomorrow. I need to skedaddle back to Hawthorne, so I'm not going to be on those. So we're going to put them all together into one. So I'm going to have a little bit of a longer presentation, but this will count for our human spaceflight, our commercial cargo, and our commercial crew presentations that we're doing. So, and apologize to you guys because I'm going to move a little bit fast, but hopefully it's exciting because I'm super jazzed about what we're doing. So first of all, this panel, we're talking about commercial human spaceflight, and I think the most important thing that is important to focus on is what are the key enablers, what will really allow for massive amounts of people to move into space. And I think it's rapid full reuse, it's rapid development, and it's a high flight cadence, right? These are the key enablers that will really allow us to open the space age for the future. These are the things that will drive down mission costs at the same time driving up safety and reliability. Air travel provides some really good history for this on all kinds of levels, actually. Air travel and the history of air travel. But in the beginning, those initial pioneers, that was a lot more expensive. And then very rapidly, those prices go down, those costs go down as, again, that flight cadence increases. Long term, we're going to have to decrease costs, both for interplanetary and near-Earth travel by orders of magnitude. And I think that's one of the key points to understand. Great pictures. I love these sort of, exciting, beautiful, what's happening in the future, right? We know a little bit about Starship. We've seen that. Ideas for a moon base, ideas for a Martian base, Martian cities. But there's the looking forward and thinking of the future, and then there's what we're already doing. Again, we talk about rapid development. I love this shot of the first complete prototype of Starship down in Texas. So looking towards that future, let's talk about what we've already done, and that's commercial cargo. Commercial cargo with NASA is one of the key enabler for our company, and also I know it's been a very important thing for NASA. That was an SAA agreement that was signed, under which we developed Falcon 9 and developed Dragon. It's been 7 years now of flying cargo missions, 18 successful missions to ISS, over 89,000 pounds of cargo have been delivered, including equipment, science, and living organisms. We're the only current vehicle capable of bringing home significant amounts of cargo and science. We've brought home 63,000 pounds of cargo to date. Both the 2 contracts, Cirrus-1 and Cirrus-2, will allow for 26 missions total. And we've already actually just had a record for the number of Dragon flights in a period of time. And later this year, we'll be flying Cirrus-19 and Cirrus-20. Cirrus-20 is the last of the Dragon 1 line. And then Cirrus-21 will be the new Dragon 2 line, which is the same Dragon 2, which is the same line we're developing for the Crew Dragon. Talked a little bit about that key enabler again, about reuse, rapid reuse, reusability. These really do increase reliability and safety because you can see what you've done, right? You can bring it home, you can understand it, you can fly it again, and you can also get into a repetition and consistency of operations. We've done 73 successful missions of F9, 3 Falcon Heavy missions, 44 successful booster landings, 26 flight-proven boosters have flown, including 4 of which have flown 3 times. And then this is really exciting to me. 7 Dragons have gone to the station, which are flight-proven Dragons. 2 of those have gone to the station 3 times, and a third one is going to go and be the 3rd Dragon to go. And if you look at this picture, you can see under the P in SpaceX on the side of Dragon, you can kind of see those little toodle emblems there. Those are actually space station emblems, if you will. They're little badges of honor. And so each time a Dragon goes to space station, it gets another little space station mark on there. Again, this is really, I think, what's long-term going to be necessary for LEO commercialization, for long-term space exploration, and to make life multiplanetary. Taking a look a little bit now to the future, though, as well as CRS, we have the CRS-2 program coming up. Dragon, again, that'll be the Crew Dragon 2 or the Cargo Dragon 2 vehicle. 30% more pressurized volume, an autonomous docking just like we do with the Crew Dragon, and a 75-day mission. Now we do a little over 30 days for our missions. These will now be 75-day missions. We'll be able to take things like the ISS solar arrays to do replacement solar arrays in the Dragon trunk. We'll have power and data services for 8 powered lockers, plus adding the capability to carry 4 more back to Earth. And we're going to continue the delivery of life of living organisms to and from the space station with a greatly accelerated return time of 3 hours after splashdown. And this picture is a photograph. This is from the Demo 1 launch. So again, this is the Dragon 2 line, and that's what it'll look like for cargo as well. And I just love this picture. This is the limb of the Earth and sunrise and Dragon coming to the space station. So taking a look at that, that's a nice segue into the commercial crew aspect of what we're doing. I won't spend too much time. We've seen this slide before, but there's a whole bunch of aspects to the system that we're fundamentally certifying for human spaceflight with NASA. You've got, of course, the Dragon on top. You've got the F9 launch vehicle. We've got our launch pad, our crew arm, which is looking just beautiful these days. Everything's ready to go in this shot, and this was the shot just before we launched Demo 1. Quickly, I'll kind of talk a little bit about the Dragon spacecraft. This is from a crew perspective. It is designed to carry up to 7 people. Nominally, it'll carry 4 for NASA missions. You get a sense of how big it is. 16 feet tall, about 13 feet in diameter. It's got the trunk. The nose cone, instead of being jettisoned and now articulating, it opens and closes. Key on the trunk down there, the trunk is actually basically 3 major purposes. It's got a radiator element, it's got the solar arrays, and it also has aerodynamic stabilizers, fins for the abort cases. Other than the trunk, everything is reusable. Dragon is designed, both the cargo and Crew Dragon variants are designed for at least 5-time reuse. So everything, the entire system, other than just the purposes of the trunk that I talked about, everything is fully reusable. We'll take a little bit of a look real quick inside of Dragon and what it looks like. So we're talking about human spaceflight, what it's going to be. We saw some amazing pictures, for example, what Virgin is doing and everybody else. It's exciting to look inside. It's going to be exciting to ride inside these vehicles. You get a sense of what it is to be one of the 4 passengers inside of Dragon. We'll have we'll also be able to have cargo on the Crew Dragon that we carry to the space station and bring home, both cargo bags as well as powered lockers. And then there's a bunch of cubbies all around. Crew Dragon is piloted through touchscreen. There are physical controls for some of the critical functions. And I'll kind of keep us moving here and go to the next slide. That was, of course, images from a ground. This is images from space. I love this picture. This is on space station. We've docked. The crew has entered. You can see that the forward hatch is open. And then there's a little Earthy there floating with real Earth behind him in the picture, through the window. Now, where are we at on the program? So Demo 1 mission flew. It was a beautiful mission from start to finish. It was a very successful test. We learned everything that we expected to learn. The data came in, it was great. We're on track for the next set of missions coming up. Dragon, Falcon 9, ground systems, and operations are all there. We learned a lot from the Dragon 2 static fire anomaly. Our vehicle integration is progressing well for the upcoming missions, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We're applying all the lessons learned that we got out of Demo 1 and getting them ready for Demo 2. Over 90% of our certification products have been delivered in most areas. And in fact, by next week, we'll be over 90% in every area and probably about 100% in a number of the areas. Many of our major certification reviews are now behind us, and the other ones are scheduled ahead of us. Our formal certification on track. There's a program level certification that you do, you kind of complete that even after the Demo 2 mission. That the purpose of that is to get ready to say we're going to go do operational missions, start doing those 6-month 4 crew member missions to station. Upcoming missions are the in-flight abort test. I'll talk about that in just a second. Demo 2, with Bob, I should say, Bob and Doug. Crew 1 with Victor and Mike, and the 2 others to be named. And then Crew 2 and beyond. There are 6 total operational missions in the contract. Let's talk about that in-flight abort test coming up. We completed our pad abort test in 2015. Hard to believe it's been 4 years since we did that. The static fire anomaly investigation is almost complete with mitigations that have been identified. They've already been incorporated into the vehicles and the entire vehicle line going forward. Both the Dragon and Falcon 9 are now at the launch site for this test. You can see them down there in the bottom left. Just to talk a little bit about how this works, right? There are 8 Super Draco engines. In fact, we'll go ahead and play the video, and you'll get to see the first part of this video is the pad abort test. There are 8 Super Dracos. They move the vehicle half a mile in about 7.5 seconds, hitting a peak velocity of 436 miles per hour. And we've completed over 700 tests of the Super Draco engines, and that's what this compilation video is. You can see a lot of tests on Dragon. You can see tests in the test stand, like some single engine tests coming up, and then a number of these where we did various tests with Dragon, either suspended or held down on the ground.
This concludes the test. Propulsion system staging completed nominally.
Another key part of Dragon and bringing the crew home safely, of course, is the parachute system. We're super excited about our parachutes and that system. We've been bringing, of course, home cargo Dragons home on chutes all of these times and all of these missions. But that doesn't stop us from continuing to develop and test and make sure that we have the most advanced spacecraft parachute recovery system in the world that we will be bringing the crew home on. Crew Dragon has 4 parachutes. And these tests that we're doing, we've completed over 25 tests to date and continue to do many more. What we've learned from these tests, and jointly with NASA and with our NASA partners in the parachute community across the industry really, is leading the way jointly with the new technologies that we're developing in test, in analysis, and also in fabrication. These really will be and are the most advanced parachutes, and I think that what gets flown across, on Boeing's flights as well as NASA's flights on Orion, I think we're going to see some of the best parachutes that's ever been made. And I'm just going to let this play just for a second, a little bit longer, because there's this really beautiful scene that I want you to see when you see these parachutes come down.
Main chutes have deployed.
This is when you call reefing, and you let the parachutes, you kind of hold them for a second before they open, then you let them open all the way. And I love this. It's beautiful. You also get a sense of why parachutes are tough. It's a very dynamic system. There's a lot going on there physically, and the modeling and the physics modeling of what's happening there. There's a lot happening, but they're beautiful.
Capsule has touched down.
All right. We'll go ahead and go to the next scene. Let's talk about the other critical point, and probably the most important point now that we're moving from Demo 1 uncrewed missions into crewed missions and what it takes to do human spaceflight, and that's training. Here you can see Bob and Doug being trained in our capsule trainer. Basically, we have ongoing crew in the loop training, joint simulations with NASA, our Demo 2 and Crew 1 crews. You can see Victor there training. There's Chell in his spacesuit. Chell is actually the backup astronaut for both Demo 2 and for Crew 1. There's Mike. Everybody's in full training mode. Of course, the crew has been with us for years as we develop the spacecraft, develop our operational approach and procedures. And now we've been months into training and continuing, and that cadence is greatly ramping up as we move towards actual flight. And we expect to complete that here at the end of the year as well. We also just completed our flight operations review, which was really the culmination of 2 years of work of developing of flight procedures and processes jointly with NASA, and I completed that review with them. I'll kind of leave you guys now with the next image is the next video is the last video. And it's a look back at what we did on Demo 1. It's what Demo 2 is going to look like to a large extent. Of course, we'll be adding the crew in, and then maybe just get us all a little bit excited again to talk about generally human space flight and what it'll be like to fly into orbital space.
It's launch trajectory and countdown net. Pad is clear. Go for launch.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Head 1 profit nominal.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Landing legs have deployed, and Falcon 9 has landed.
Dragon, separation confirmed.
Houston Station, space ground to ISS thrusters enabled.
Houston Station, Dragon hatch opened at 13:07. On behalf of Ripley, Little Earth, myself, and our crew, welcome to the Crew Dragon.
Houston Station on 2, ISS crew is ready for departure. Separation visually confirmed. We have visual on Doug. We have 4 healthy sheep.
Recover this is DRC. Dragon has landed.
All right, thank you, Benji, and I'm glad we could fit two presentations into one. So that worked well, and Pat has given us a bit more time on this panel, so we still have about 30 minutes, maybe a few minutes less, for discussion and Q&A, and I've got lots and lots of questions from the audience. But to kick things off, I want to start just with asking the panel to discuss a bit with multiple companies on the cusp of flying paying customers. What are the processes, procedures, plans in place to enable that next step, safely and efficiently flying humans to space? So, Beth, I'm going to let you start off with that one, and then everybody jump in.
So what's in place to sort of enable the next step? Sort of roughly speaking, we're going to bring SpaceShipTwo here to New Mexico shortly, and then in my world of cabin testing and training, we'll have some cabin testing upcoming, and the objectives for those and the rough shape of those are roughly ready. We'll refine them as we get closer to the flights. And then it's time to train our first commercial astronaut, Sir Richard Branson, our founder, and start commercial flights.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the enablers, well, specifically for our mission, it's going to be the finalization of and completion of the pad abort test. Obviously, the uncrewed flight test next month. Those are important. But if you look at enablers for the next decade, I think it's 3 really primary things, and I kind of hit on in my presentation. One is a commitment to safety and mission assurance. That's foundational. That's important for the entire industry, I think, because any of us that have problems, it will affect the others, right? So that industry focus on that, price point, obviously. So we all have to collectively work together and drive the price point down. That's going to be important for everybody. And then, as the general talked earlier, the importance of having a robust and appropriate regulatory environment is going to be important for us all to succeed. And there's a lot of parallels when you look back at the advancement of the commercial air travel industry to all three of those focuses.
Other comments?
I think the enablers that I talked about as well, I think I actually agree a lot with what John said. I think that, though, again, that reuse capability and just rapid cadence and willingness to do rapid development in a development environment, and then with that very high attention to safety and reliability all the time. I think John's absolutely right. I think we're going to absolutely have to not only take care of the lives of every individual that flies and every group that flies, but make sure that we're taking care of the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I think we're all in this together, obviously, and the standards we've developed at NASA and that Virgin Galactic has developed work together. I think we could do some work on informed consent together. I think we could do work on electronic medical records as far as the medical part of and so that we go in it with a consensus. You're doing the ground, all the egress training and the recovery training for the vehicles, and NASA is supporting that. And then we're going to fly some folks, and we're going to fly more people. So it's just, I think every mission is going to be just a huge data point for us all, and we'll evolve from that, and then come together as a group and try to standardize our efforts.
And I was just going to say, for us, we just start at least 6 months prior to a space flight, getting medical screening, questionnaires, and exams, and speaking with and getting to know our future astronauts and learning from them as they learn from us what the process will be, and walking through to make sure that we address any concerns and do the appropriate training and screening so that it's a magnificent experience for them.
So clearly, both a suborbital flight and an orbital flight are transformational experiences for the people that are fortunate enough to be on those flights, whether they're professional astronauts or paying customers or research scientists. But when we first started talking about this panel, we discussed a little bit about what is the role of suborbital flight provider to orbital flights. Is there some lessons learned, for example, or other things that may transition? Any comments on those kinds of opportunities between suborbital and orbital flights?
Well, you guys have done a lot of the work with the screening, with the centrifuge training, and our folks we're planning high performance, jet aircraft training and that sort of thing. But with that, those are people who experience, suborbital, and we can use what you've learned, and hopefully they'll have a taste and they'll want to go for an orbital flight. So.
And I think we've talked about the fact that from a medical perspective, we could see a dedicated research flight so that if there was particular hardware and then the software, the squishy people in the back, but testing the processes, the procedures, and how a particular payload specialist might perform a research project, and before investing in a longer duration orbital flight, seeing how that would unfold in a suborbital flight. How the processes, the procedures, the function, the skill, and the performance of that experiment in suborbital before it went on to orbital flight.
And there's a lot of behavioral health aspects to a long duration flight. I mean, we have 3 crew members in a mouse lab go up, and there are already 6 crew members up there. There are 9 crew members, and so they all need to train together, and that's evolving at NASA as we speak. So, and with us.
Other thoughts on the integration of suborbital and orbital flight opportunities? Buddy?
Well, Tarah touched on it, but I think in theory, payload researchers could iterate suborbitally at a sort of rapid reflight rate toward a longer duration orbital research activity in terms of scientific experimenters.
All right, great, thank you. Companies need to make money to stay in business, and so part of that revenue stream is flying more and more people, more and more frequently. What are your thoughts on how we get to where we are starting from, which is lots of unknown unknowns about flying humans that are not highly screened medically, highly trained for years, sometimes decades, to a cadence where we can fly more people more quickly, consolidate training, increase efficiency. What are the steps that it's going to take for us to get to that point of a more rapid cadence of flying more people?
Really should let the doctors talk, but there's just going to be a lot of learning, and that's why suborbital is just so interesting right now, and a lot of collaboration. Because think about how soon it's going to be in our lifetime to go from 500 people, the fighter pilots that have flown in space, to 500,000. I mean, the learning that we get on how we visit, live, and work in space is going to be immense. So the more we work together and share that learning and adjust the operations, adjust the training, it's just going to be hugely important.
And we're going to learn a lot from VG from the ground forces. I mean, you're essentially a baby shuttle launch and landing, especially you still have the ability to bail out correctly. So, you know, having the ground forces to support that and will be some lessons learned. And as far as making it affordable to the average person, our business model is going to take a lotto. You know, it's expensive. It's like between 50, 60 million. So a spot. I mean, I think the Soyuz is up to 80 million a spot, and the shuttle was around 115 million a spot, and the Soyuz started out at 20 million a spot. So, the folks that we're going after are sovereign nations who want to sponsor someone who would represent that country to go up, and people who just won the lotto. So that's just to be honest. But what we could set up a lotto, couldn't we? For Virgin Galactic and others, you know, have a couple of seats that's in a lotto. Just thinking out of it.
And definitely from the continuum of standards that I talked about early on is that we've come a long way, and the more we fly, the more people we fly, the more we learn, the more we can apply that. And I think for us, the next step as we begin to expand from just centrifuge exposures to real suborbital spaceflight exposures, and then we can validate the safety of our processes, the safety of the screening, and make sure that we have a reliable process by which to make educated decisions, evidence-based decisions on what's appropriate and what's safe. And I think the more people we can fly with the variety of ages and issues, then the more we'll learn and the better off we'll be.
All right, thank you. So I'm looking at lots and lots of questions from the audience and questions that have gotten lots of votes. So I'll try to work my way through as many of those as we can. A number of questions relate to whether there are studies going on with the pilots and in terms of research, effects of weightlessness or the high G, micro G, high G exposure multiple times in fairly short order. So what's currently going on in that arena, and what plans are in place for continuing to do that kind of investigation? Tarah, you want to start out with that?
Yeah, so under the FAA Center of Excellence for Commercial Space Transportation, there's a study going on right now through the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston that is looking at our pilots in particular, and because this is the first group of folks who are expected to do this, not first to do suborbital spaceflight, but to experience the microgravity and then do manual inputs all the way to landing. And so we wanted to look at the exposures, the high G of the launch, followed by the period of weightlessness, and then the high G of entry, and the high GZ particularly from entry. Previously, and with shuttle, they're on their backs, not necessarily, they're getting GX, not necessarily GZ, so our pilots get GZ. So we're looking at that. They get centrifuge exposures. They also do high G training in the Extra 300, our aerobatic aircraft, and so we're looking at data, so accelerometry and heart rate data from their extra flights, high G flights, the centrifuge flights, and then from space flights, and comparing those and seeing what they're, making sure that they're adequately trained and that their responses are such that it's very tolerable. And so far, that's what we're seeing. And so, and going forward in the future, looking more as we fly more pilots and astronauts into space, we'll continue to analyze that data and ensure that our training is appropriate. And then also looking at research for the spaceflight participants as well.
And I think the work Richard Jennings Space Adventures and UTMB has done for short duration is the model we're basing our work on, as far as following those folks for short duration. Long duration, we need as many people as we can get. There's a syndrome, space adaptation neuroocular syndrome, about 30% of our astronauts, because we've been flying 6 people now for over 12 years. We started noticing visual changes, and about 20 to 30% of our folks, because of a fluid shift and because of high carbon dioxide, which is a potent cerebral vasodilator, because of the resistive exercise we're putting them through, straining, and other stressors and the radiation, our folks are manifesting in the back of the eyeball, where the venous system and the arterial system meet. The back of the eyeball is actually swelling. It's not papilledema, but it's optic disc edema, and we're seeing significant changes in the back of the eyeball. So much that we have an ocular coherence tomography device up in orbit and ultrasound, and we've been talking the last couple of months about whether we're going to be able to spinal tap folks to see if it's really intracranial pressure problems and what we can do about it. And so we just need more people to study. It's always we need more in. We also need to see that way we can see the effects and our countermeasures the more people we fly.
Other comments on that?
Not following Smith.
So a number of questions have come in and been voted up in the priority regarding schedules and meeting NASA schedules and delays in schedules and so forth. So I think that at this point in time primarily is directed towards Boeing and SpaceX. What impact does that schedule pressure have on your development, your testing, your plans, and so on?
Well, I mean, I don't consider it pressure. I mean, it's important to make sure that you've got the culture and the decision making that you're going to do it right. I mean, you need to have schedule awareness. The slips that we've had have been damaging to our customer, and they've had to buy extra Soyuz flights. So we need to get done. You know, we need to finish our test flights. We need to get into operational services missions. It's incredibly important to advance all three market segments. I mean, we need to maintain the International Space Station and its research capabilities. So we need to get there, and we understand the necessity of getting there, but getting there right outweighs all of it. So it's not pressure, but it is awareness, and there is an incredible focus on our team and obviously I'm sure on Benji's team to get it done right and soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, we won't fly until we're ready, and we being NASA and SpaceX jointly. That's the number one thing. We're going to do this together. We've been doing it together, and we'll fly when we know that we can take Bob and Doug up and bring them home safely, and every other crew and every other passenger that we take in the future. But just like John said, we're also aware of the fact that the space station has to be manned. So
we've got to do both. Sorry.
You need a doctor. No, I'm just kidding.
This is a good time to like choke on stage.
Because Smith's
But yeah, I think that's the fundamental. The fundamental is you don't fly until you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so much going on. It's such an exciting time at Johnston Space Center with all these new vehicles and the new programs coming online. It's also a time where I think the earlier speaker was talking about you need the monies and the personnel, and you don't want to burn your folks out, and so that's always a concern, that you have the right people, well trained, and who are not trying to do a gazillion projects all at the same time. So that's a concern we all need to. I was the crew surgeon on Columbia, so the Columbia mission. So this is one of the, it's tough, it's dangerous stuff. And so I feel really good about what I'm hearing, and we're going to get it right, but it is dangerous business. We're hoping to make it less dangerous and more affordable. I get that, but we have to do it incrementally, and it's going to be a slow, deliberative process.
All right, thank you. So there's a number of questions that are addressed to specific people. One that got lots of votes is to you, Beth. So you worked EVA for NASA. So the question is, when is VG going to do a spacewalk?
Oh! When is VG going to do a spacewalk? I didn't notice an airlock on Unity, so I might have to get back to you on that one. But I understand the instinct and the desire, yes, and I don't know how this room, well, these are industry veterans in this room, so that's obviously how I came from ISS EVA. But I will say, ISS is an inspiration and a beacon for us all. The fact that it has been assembled, maintained, integrated, built, is now hopefully taking steps towards commercialization by all of the parties involved is huge. I could see all kinds of different spacewalks happening in the future, but Unity doesn't have an airlock. No.
So. All right. Lots of questions relate more to vehicle-type questions, but since the focus of this panel is human spaceflight, I'm going to try and focus the last question or two in that regard. So. Contingency plans for a medical event occurring during a space flight, be it suborbital or orbital. What are the plans and preparations that you have, Tarah and Smith, you would foresee in terms of suborbital orbital flight for an during flight medical event?
Well, we have a small, we have a little baby emergency room there. So again, I mentioned earlier, our concerns are electrocution, and we get a dysrhythmia, and we just have to, they're in good shape. We put good protoplasm up there. We've got very healthy people up there. Or somebody's kidney stone shows up that we weren't expecting, even though we'd screen for it. Or somebody's, we screen for brain tumors, but we've had 2 brain tumors we found. We've removed them, benign pituitary tumors, and flown. We find coronary disease very early, and we're able to stop it and actually reverse it. You can reverse coronary disease, and we've flown people with significant lesions that we've done the risk models and proven that they're not going to have a heart attack. But we have it's working with these folks to be able to have the vehicle to deorbit, and of course, the big ones are fire and ammonia leaks and electrical fire and a rapid decompression because of an orbital debris hit. And they practice that all the time, run to the Soyuz and wait and see if we can go fight the fire, or we've got time to go close the hatch and save part of the orbiter like they did on the Mir when they had that collision. So we have plans, we have checklists, and we practice it, and deorbiting for a medical emergency would be a big deal. Not to be too macabre, but we've got a group that's been working, a death in orbit. So what would we do? Where would we put them in case that happens? Sorry, I don't want to end it on that.
I'll bring us up.
Bring us up. Get us out of there. Pull us out of that.
So for us, looking at risk, you're looking at the period of time, what's the medical condition and what is the risk of that occurring during flight. And during orbital flight, there's a much higher risk of something occurring because they're there for longer. So with the suborbital flight, the risk is lower and we can accept more risk because the period of time and the period of flight is much shorter. And for us, the process is planning, screening, and then making sure that the tools are in place on the ground so that if something were to happen during a flight, that we are there to respond immediately upon landing. There's no planning to have a nurse or unfortunately a doctor on board when we fly, so we will not have somebody there to be an attendant on board. It will just be the spaceflight participants and the pilots are not expected. They're flying. They're not expected to get up and go in the back and assist with a medical emergency. So that will be something that through training they can be prepared for, and then also for us on the ground to be observing and then prepared for a response when they land.
All right, well, thank you. Our time is up. Okay. Thank you so much to all the panelists for your presentations and your discussion, and to you as the audience. So thank you.